Um, just a few housekeeping things. As I mentioned, probably you'll see on your screen a place to do chat, and we can, I'm going to change that setting. So hopefully, yeah, so we'll have a group chat there. So as you have comments or questions or whatever, we'll go ahead and put them in the chat. And what I hope to do is at the end of this is answer questions. But I'm going to try to move through quickly. Just want to be aware of everybody's time. And again, thank you for joining me here today. Looks like according to my clock, it's 1:03, so we'll plan to get started. So one of the reasons that I'm doing this webinar, by the way, this is my first webinar, and so I'm really excited to be able to do this, and also just to be full disclosure, I'm a little nervous about it. So if I go too fast or whatever, you can tell me to slow down or whatever. But the main reason that I wanted to start this webinar or do this webinar today is I realize that a lot of people out there in our particular field, one of the things that I think we all struggle with at times is getting our documentation done. Quick story, before I went into private practice, I spent about 9 years working for a nonprofit organization, and we mainly worked with at-risk children and youth. And I was a therapist with them, and then later a supervisor, and then a clinical consultant. And by far, one of the things that most people struggled with through that whole whole nonprofit agency world was getting documentation done and getting it done on time. And it seemed like, I know for me, there were times when I felt like, oh my gosh, the documentation is more important than the clients we're working with. But so I really tried to figure out some ways to do documentation in a more efficient manner. And so I've played around with a lot of different things over the years. And that's the reason I wanted to put this webinar on, is just to show you kind of a hack that I've learned in just using G Suite and Google and the tools available there in order to do one of the most repetitive tasks that we do, which is putting together progress notes, session notes, however you want to call that. One of the things about G Suite and Google is that there's so much information that I could share about that, and there's more that we could put into just this 1 hour or less of time we're going to spend today. And so what I'm putting together right now and working on is a full course that I'm calling G Suite for Therapists. And those of you on my email list have seen that. And so I'm putting that together. And so I'm just a quick plug for that. If you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com /G Suite course, you can go ahead and pre-register for that. And I'm just offering that as a way to really kind of go into all the detail that needs to be gone into around G Suite and Google. So that's, and all the tools that it offers. I mean, it's just, I've been blown away really here lately by all the stuff that they're doing. They're constantly updating, and I'm on several, I watch a lot of, I'm a constant learner, so I'm always looking for new tools and new ways to do the things that we do. And one of the things that I know from all of this is that there's more than one way to do a lot of the things that we do. But the other thing about G Suite and Google is that I like the fact that it allows me to do things. I love to bootstrap, and just being able to do things inexpensively, and also just with that learning curve that learning how to bootstrap does. Looking at my notes here. So told you about pre-registering for the course. And what I'll do is send you more information after this. The other thing I wanted the people to know is that I am recording this. So I will have this up again for people to watch, for those that either came late or maybe didn't get a chance to register with the course, or for whatever reason couldn't be here live. So I'll do that along with some notes and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and get started, and let me get to the right place here. Okay, here we go, guys. I'm sorry about that. All right, so let me let's get this going here. All right, so the reason that I did all of this, and I apologize for that, my ineptness there on this. The one thing that I needed when I was looking at doing session notes was I really wanted a way, when I write my session notes, I write them in a narrative format. And one of the things about that is it's very labor intensive. I had a template that I did, that I used, and I basically found out and really kind of figured out, I write my notes pretty much the same way every time. But the other thing that I knew, that if I used a template, I was able to create a progress note pretty quickly, but not as quick as I wanted to. It still involved a lot of typing. So what I really needed was a form. And I know a lot of people have like checkoff forms and things like that they use. But that still didn't present the narrative that I needed. So what I needed was something that was both a narrative and a template together. I mean, a form and a template together that created a narrative. And so the other thing too is that there's software programs out there for creating session notes, but a lot of them are pretty expensive, and I just didn't want to have to spend a lot of money. So I started playing around with Google and doing some research, and what I found is that if I used Google Forms and Google Docs together, I could create a pretty neat tool that enabled me to do session notes quickly. I mean, I can knock out a session note pretty quickly by using those things together. So, and of course, without all the typing. So let me show you how I did this. First thing we need to understand, though, is a little bit about Google Drive and G Suite. For those of you that aren't familiar with G Suite, G Suite is the set of tools that we have through Google. And if you have a Gmail account, if you have anything to do with Google or have an account, you should have G Suite available to you. Now, the problem is with G Suite, and the thing that we have to be aware of is that the free version of Google Drive or G Suite is not HIPAA secure. So we need to be able to make it HIPAA secure. And the way that you do that is through their paid version, which is really well worth the expense. It's only $5 a month. And what you get with that is the BAA, the Business Associate Agreement, which is something that HIPAA requires. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot about that in this webinar, because that's a whole other topic of how to set up G Suite for HIPAA compliance or being HIPAA secure. But what I really wanted to focus on today is just show you how to use this specific tool. So, this is basically how we do it, and I'm going to walk you through this in detail here. First, you need to set up a folder in Google Drive, and that's where you're going to store all of your notes. The second thing that we'll do is set up a template using Google Docs, and I'll show you how to do that as well. And then we'll create the form that will link with the Google Doc, and those two things will work together. And the way that we make them work together is using an add-on called Form Publisher. So let's go over and look at that. So I've set up a just a folder here that I'm using really kind of as for demonstration and teaching purposes. So for most of us, when we're writing session notes, we've got a certain format that we use. And it might be something like a SOAP note or a DAP note or a combination of that. There was one that I ran into the other day. Let me look at my notes here. Called a basic SID note, and then a Gilman HIPAA note. I'm going to put a link to a resource I found that Tamara Suttle has put out that explains those different styles of note. But it really doesn't matter what style of note you use. The main thing is you want to be able to set up a template on the front end. So for those of you, when you go into, let me show you over here on a new tab here. I've got my home page set up as just Google. Let's see, it's not showing up here. Yeah, there it is. So when I go into Google, let me move my window here. If you go into just Google, the regular Google page, you'll probably see over here in the top right where it says Google Apps. And G Suite is just the name they've given for all the apps that Google has. And if you go over here, you'll see Drive, and you'll click on Drive. So I've already got my Drive open here. Now you'll have to log in order to access these tools over here in Google Apps. You'll have to log in to into G Suite. I mean, log into Google with your Google password and your Google account. So once you log in, what you'll want to do is create your template first. Now I've already put together, here's the template that I put together. And with the template, you can see I've got just, a practice name, practice address, your patient name, your date of session, your start time, end time. Also in here, I've got the session note itself. Also, if there was anybody else present for the session, when I do a lot of couples work. So with, of course, I'm also on the insurance panels. So a lot of times I have an identified client. And so usually I do that for the insurance billing, and the note is geared towards a single client, but also put, the spouse's name and talk about that. And then this is my kind of version of my note. I guess this would be considered kind of a DAP note, but I've got the assessment, mental status, suicidal thoughts and comments about that, and the presenting issues and the focus of the session. So I've created all of this in a template form. Now you'll notice here on these, after the name, like here, patient name, I've got these angle brackets on the side of these things. And so when you create your template, what you want to do is any information that you want to be populated in the note is kind of like a fill in the blank. Anything that you want this to be filled in later, you will put into your template. And so you'll put the doubled angle brackets on each side of this. And so let me show you how that works. So I'm going to pull this over. Let me reduce some of these windows down, and that way we can see it kind of side by side here. Okay, so this is my template you create this first. You create your template. Then you want to be able to create a new form. So the way to create a form in Google is you go again to New, you go to More, and you click on Google Forms. And it's asking me because I've got this in a public folder here. Okay, I'm going to use this. This is a brand new form in Google Forms. And so what you want to do is obviously give your form a title. Okay, And then what you want to start doing is looking over here at your template is start creating the form so that you have a place that this template will use to be filled from. So the first thing you have here, I've got here is the name. So I'm just going to create a question here that says name. And this is, I'm going to do this as a short answer. And you'll see over here on the side, you have your choices of what that's going to look like. Then down here, I've got a next question. So I'm going to put in the date. And what you want to do is make sure that when you put in your question for the form is that it matches up with what you put in the angled brackets. And so that's going to be, actually Google allows for a date to be populated automatically. So, and so you can see how this works here. You just do, I'm going to do start time. And again, I'm going to use the thing that Google has available. I'm going to add another section. And so what I'm doing is just going down here and adding all of these sections here. Okay. And so I'm not going to go through all of this and show you how to do all this. One other thing I will show you here on this one, and that is going to, with this, that one I just did, it's going to be a short answer as well. So the way this is organized is I've got it organized into sections here. So we've got the patient information up here on the template. And so I've got this first section done here. So in order to add a section, I'll just click this button and it's going to have a new section. So I'm going to title this just assessment. And that way I know that I'm working from this session. And then I just keep adding these things that need to be filled in by the form later. Now, once you get all of this complete, it will look like this. And this is the one that I've created. And I just call it my session note helper. And this is what I work from every day with creating my session notes. So I will go in with this and just fill in the form every day. Now, once you create the form here, then you need to be able to link it to your session note. So in order to do that, you need to add a plugin. So if you'll click on these three dots over here, I'm going to widen this window here so it's a little easier to see here. You click on these three dots over here, you go in here to add-ons. And if you haven't used this add-on before, it's not going to show up, so you just search it. But the add-on is called Form Publisher. Now I've already, excuse me, added this to the note and to this document, so it already recognizes it. So it's already in there. So the next thing I want to do is to link it to my template. So I'm going to go in here and click on Form Publisher. This is where the add-ons are. Click on Form Publisher and just click Get Started. And I'm going to I have my own template. So I'm going to use the template that I've already got. And so there it is. See, let me make sure. Yep, that's the right one. And so you'll notice here, right here, it's saying that I've got 5 markers matching and I've got 22 markers not matching. And so what this lets me know is that I don't have and this is actually working from my original template. These are the sections that I need to put into the form that I haven't put into the form yet. So let me show you what my finished form looks like and how I use it. Okay, this is the form that I've already created. And like I said, this is the one that I use every day. And you can see I've got it into sections, and these sections correspond to the sections in my template. And so it just goes down. And when I'm filling out the form, it will automatically go in here. So let me show you how it actually works. Let me go out of here. And I'm going to actually open up my session note template. So this is how I actually write a note. So once you've got all this created, so as you notice, there's some stuff missing here from the other form over here. You notice on the template that we created, it's got questions and responses here, and that's going to be your master template for your session note. But what you can do, let me go back here. You'll see that it's got the responses. What Google does automatically is put the responses to your note into a spreadsheet. And it's asking if I want to create a spreadsheet. But since this is a new note, session note template, I don't have any responses yet. But my other actual note does. So I'm just going to do a hypothetical client here. So Sally Smith, and then we're going to do the date, 22nd. I'm going to do start time, 12 o'clock, end time, 1 o'clock. You can see this can go very quickly. So then I go to next. And euthymic, affect congruent with the demeanor, oriented ×3, moderate degree of stress in their emotional life, no suicidal thoughts. You can see how quickly this goes. Some depression, conflict in marriage. And these are all phrases that I generally use when I'm writing my notes. And so I've put all these in here. And obsessive thoughts, I'm just picking stuff here randomly. And you can, obviously with this, you can update this, add stuff as you go along. Okay, and then I'm going into the intervention section. So and you can see that this just goes very quickly in writing a session note. And then I'm done. Okay, and then I can go on and do another session note. So you can see how quickly that it took me to do that. So let me show you what that looks like once it's finished. I go into Drive here. being slow today. And then I've got a folder down here that are session notes. And there's Sally Smith right there. And there's the session note. You can see it's completely filled in and it's in a narrative format. So that's how this works. And I know I've gone through this very quickly with all of this. What I will do with this, with all of this information, I've actually got a step-by-step that I put together, and I think in the email, it's going to go through this step-by-step of how to set this up. And I went through this really quickly. So, but let me know your questions. Let me just unmute here. So, questions, thoughts? Sorry about all the technical difficulties with all of this.
It is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I did intern work a couple of years ago when I was getting my master's, and I was doing a business plan to start my business, and there are note companies out there, but you're right, they cost a small fortune, and this is so easy to do. Thank you so much.
Yes, good, good. Yeah, so other questions people have? Okay, so I see some of the folks are typing their questions. Are you willing to share your stuff with us to create? Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you all a copy of my template in Google Docs that I use, and that way you'll have a copy of that. The setting up the actual form does take some time, and I'm not going to share that exact form with you just because it's in my language and the way that I write it. But you can use the template to work from in this. So that's a good question, Dawn. Let's see. Let's see what else. Any other questions people have?
No, but I like your language.
Okay. Okay. So
your verbiage that you use and stuff. I wish I don't write well.
say that again.
We want you to share that with us.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put together maybe a list of some of the things that I use as far as my verbiage and how I do it. And again, I think the thing that is great about this is that you're able to you're able to add to it as you go along. I mean, I'm constantly adding phrases and things. Also, if you'll notice on this, at the bottom of each section, pretty much, I have added a section for other. Let me turn on the screen sharing. I'm sorry, I'm realizing I'm not showing this to folks. So if you look on this form that I created, at the bottom of each section, there's a checkbox for other. And if you type anything in that other section, it will also populate on your Google Doc. So that's another thing that's great about this, of being able to, it's just so versatile to be able to do this. So
Now, I use, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
okay, go ahead.
Practice. So with that, like once it creates the document, I can just copy and paste that into my simple practice, my electronic medical record, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly what I do. I use therapy appointment, and that's what I do. So as you can see with this system, you can knock out your session notes in just a few minutes, and it's and it really is a time saver. Other questions?
Yes, I had a question.
Okay.
I worked at a company where there was a lot of emphasis on cloning, and several employees were kind of got disciplinary actions because of cloning. I'm sorry, my son's in the background. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
So I'm wondering, I know this is very specific. You go in and you check the different boxes, but is there any like worry about, you know, kind of being accused of cloning or using your notes because because of the check boxes?
Right. Right. Well, the one thing is that, you know, obviously you wouldn't want to create the same note for each session. And one of the things that, the other thing about this, let me go back into the screen share. Well, even once you have the session note written, and it comes up on Google Docs, guess what? You can just go in here and type stuff.
Cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, you know, this will give you your template for stuff. And I've got a few errors here, like right here. There's it's got the word patient twice. So I just go in, delete that. And then if I want to add other comments, I can. And I can go in and clean this up before I actually post the note. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, obviously you're not going to create the same note every single time. Now your verbiage is going to be the same and be similar every time, but you don't obviously, and that was a problem when I worked for the agency as well. We'd have people trying to make too much of a short, you know, too much of a shortcut and just clone their notes. And that's not a good idea. It's certainly not ethical.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another question here. Just curious, did you have a lawyer review the documents to ensure they meet the legal requirements? One of the things about this is that you do need to be familiar with your state laws and understand what is involved with HIPAA, what HIPAA requires, and that sort of thing. Basically, HIPAA. There's a lot of confusion and angst that people have around HIPAA. There's a podcast that I just did with Roy Huggins. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, again, go to practiceoftherapy.com and you can listen to the podcast. But I've also got a blog post that I did called HIPAA Anxiety in Private Practice. And I think we have a lot of, quite frankly, a lot of unnecessary angst about stuff. Certainly you want your forms and things to be vetted by your local, the laws vary from state to state and country to country. And so you want to be sure to vet those things. HIPAA requires, this is my understanding of a HIPAA requirements for a note. You need to, of course, have the time and date at which you met with the client. You need to say how long the session was. You need to talk about their presenting issues. You need to be able to say what you did in the session, what you focused on in the session. You also need to give their progress and talk about what sort of things they're working towards. Also, what your plan is with the client. So what I incorporated in my note were pretty much all those things. And again, the beauty of this is you add what you want to add with all of this, and just make it so that it fits for you. So, other questions? I hear someone typing. If you want to just speak up, we've got I think we've got everybody on here. And if you've got yourself, let me unmute everyone. I think I've got everyone unmuted. Okay. So, yeah, other questions? Yes.
I'm curious about how long you've been using this system. them in this format, and if you had any challenges with the insurance panel that you utilize.
Been using this for about 2 years now, and so far no problems. So
Okay, great.
yeah, again, I think you know, depending on where you are or whatever, you know, I get a lot of requests for people that are seeking disability and such, and this is the format that I use, and haven't had, you know, sometimes they have some clarifying questions. It's from what, at least my own research, it meets kind of the requirements for HIPAA and what kind of people are looking for in their notes. The other thing I need to mention here, though, is the difference between a medical record note, which is what you would put, what you would keep from a legal standpoint, versus psychotherapy notes. Your medical record note is kind of a legal document. In other words, it's documenting a person's medical history, if you will. But your psychotherapy notes are private and for your eyes only. And there's no way, unless you get a court subpoena, you don't have to share those with anyone. And so you could do, you know, if you do a lot of psychotherapy notes, you know, lots of different ways to do that. You know, some people like to take notes when they're in session. I don't. I usually come out and make notes after my session. But if you're taking notes, you know, one way is just to go in and type these out, you know, using your form and your template with this. So.
Hey, Gordon, I plan on having a practice that's strictly suicide, and I don't plan to take any insurance. And I'm wondering if I have to, I know I have to keep psychotherapy notes, but do I have to keep electronic health record notes? Do I have to go on that program and create records for my clients that don't necessarily want them?
Yes, you do. You do need to have a medical record note, which is just talks about what you're treating the person for, talking about
But
how
am
long
I
the
required?
session was.
But am I required to put it into the electronic medical system, or am I just required to keep a paper copy?
Are you on insurance panels?
Nope.
Okay, then no, you wouldn't have to.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. And here's another fun fact. If you're not on insurance panels and you're not sending in any sort of health claims or sending any information electronically to anyone with your clients, HIPAA doesn't apply. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability something Act. And so that's a thing that again, talking about the HIPAA anxiety that people have is if you're just doing strictly a private pay kind of situation, you don't necessarily have to follow HIPAA.
But you know, I want to do telemental health as well, and I'm pretty sure that part of that requires that you have a HIPAA compliant platform to see your online clients. So I understand that part, but part of the reason that I don't take insurance is that I can ensure my clients don't have that floating out there on the internet somewhere.
Right. Yeah, you want, you know, the bottom line to all of this, HIPAA included, is client confidentiality.
Right.
Which is just kind of, you know, that should be ingrained in all of us. So. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, folks, thanks for joining me. What I will do is send this, get this edited, and sorry for my my technical faux pas here at the beginning, and bearing with me through this first webinar. As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a full G Suite course that's, I promise, will go much more smoothly than this webinar did. And we will, and it's going to have all the ins and outs of Google, at least from a therapeutic standpoint, and knowing how to use the different tools that Google has available. I think the one thing that, another reason that I wanted to do it is that Google is very business oriented, but there's a uniqueness to the business we're in. And there's a lot of little things that I've learned along the way as far as hacks and that sort of thing. Thanks again, folks, for joining me. I'd love to get your feedback. I'm going to send, I'll send you a survey to let me know about what went well with this and what didn't. Obviously, my technical faux pas that slowed us down as far as figuring out why the screen sharing wasn't showing up was one of those things. But that's it. And I'd love to hear from you. You can put comments on the Facebook page, or even in the I've got the Practice of Therapy private community. If you haven't joined that, you can go over there and join that community. It's a private Facebook group that I've set up for people that are following me with the Practice of Therapy. So, well, take care, folks.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I so appreciate this group, and I so appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks a bunch, folks. Take care. Have a fun weekend.
You too.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.